went to my best friend's house after school one day. She invited her boyfriend over without her parents knowing, and her parents didn't even know she had a boyfriend. They didn't allow her to have a boyfriend. I was in the front room working on a science project and watching out to see if her parents spontaneously came home. My best friend and her boyfriend were upstairs. All of a sudden, I see her dad pull into the top of the driveway unexpectedly, and I sprinted upstairs and screamed, "Your dad is here!" They both were laughing and they were like, "Haha, you're so funny." They didn't believe me. And I was like, "Look, he is literally in the driveway." And we were all freaking out. And my best friend screamed, "Where are his shoes?" I didn't remember where I put them because I had hid them earlier to try to be funny. And he ran out the back door and he had to walk home. Her dad didn't see him, but her boyfriend did leave a pot of coffee on. My best friend and I at the time did not drink coffee. And her dad comes in and says, "Why is the coffee machine on? You guys don't drink coffee." And I don't think
this woman will never look at sticky notes the same way again. Once a young woman came home to find her house empty. She went to the kitchen to get a snack and found a sticky note left on the fridge. But as soon as she looked at it, she realized something was strange about it. It said there is someone in the house. Assuming it could be her brother, she said, "That's really funny, but the prank's over." No one answered. She walked towards the door, but it was locked. Then she turned around and on the table was another sticky note. It said, "You're not going anywhere." She began to feel scared. She opened the kitchen drawer to try to find something to defend herself, but the drawer was completely emptied. Inside was another sticky note, "You shouldn't play with sharp things." She ran upstairs to her bedroom and locked the door, and quickly called the police and begged them to come as soon as possible. Then all of a sudden the TV turned on by itself. It was loud and static, but on the screen was another note. "Now I have you where I want you." This time the young woman began screaming. Soon the police found her in a corner crying in fear. They searched the house and found no one there. But as soon as the young woman stood up and tried to leave, police found something horrifying. An officer took off a note stuck on the young woman's back and handed it to her. It said, This woman will never look at sticky notes the same way again. All of a sudden, the TV turned on by itself. It was loud and static, but on the screen was another note. "Now I have you where I want you." This time, the young woman began screaming. Soon, the police found her in a corner crying in fear. They searched the house and found no one there. But as soon as the young woman stood up and tried to leave, police found something horrifying. An officer took off a note stuck on the young woman's back and handed it to her. It said, "I was this close."
I was in class on Zoom. I wanted to go to sleep, honestly, because like when I'm tired, I go to sleep. I end up falling asleep and then class ends and everyone starts leaving the class except me, because I was like in a whole other universe at this point. I was dreaming, I was flying. At this point, me and the teacher are alone in the call. This is the best part. Then the teacher starts talking to me and he's like, "Samantha, wake up. Samantha, please. Samantha, you have another class." He woke me up, but I was half awake, so I didn't really know what was going on.
When you go to sleep tonight, don't do what she did. Once there was a young woman named Alicia who moved into a very old house with her parents, but she could have never expected the horrifying things that this would lead to. After living in this house for a few weeks, things started becoming strange. Alicia noticed she was becoming weaker and feeling sick. Pretty soon, she couldn't leave her bed and was asleep for most of the day. The doctors came to examine her, and everyone wanted to find out what this mysterious sickness was, but no one had any answers, until one day Alicia passed away while sleeping. Then, after her funeral, her mother came home and with a broken heart began cleaning her room. That's when she noticed something strange about Alicia's pillow. There were 2 small red stains. She picked it up and realized the pillow was unusually heavy, so she called her husband to go look at it with her. Then Alicia's mother felt something inside the pillow move. Her father opened the pillow and took all the feathers out. There they saw something crawl out. It was a monster.
Who is a teacher that wronged you and you're still mad about it?
My 8th grade Spanish teacher. So language was a requirement and I was like, I'm gonna take Spanish because my mom is Peruvian and I speak it, but it's pretty bad and I would like to better it, you know? So it's the first day of class, I sit down, my teacher's like, "Okay guys, you're gonna write a whole paper about what you did over the summer, and then once everyone's done, you're gonna come in the front and say it in Spanish." And I'm like, okay, so I start writing my whole thing. So I go up there, I'm like, "Hola clase, me llamo Valeria, este verano yo fui a Perú para comer lomo saltado, también yo jugué videojuegos con mis amigas y todas esas cosas." And I'm like going, and then my teacher goes, Stop right now." And I'm like,
"A little girl made me cry last night." So the coffee shop that I work at also has ice cream. And so this lady had brought in her granddaughter to get ice cream. This little girl's probably about 4 or 5 years old. And she asked for ice cream with sprinkles. And so I absolutely loaded it with sprinkles because she's a kid and I have a heart. And the entire time this girl's eating her ice cream, she just keeps glancing at me. And right before they're about to leave, the grandmother brings her up and says, "Okay, tell her what you wanted to tell her." The little girl looks up at me and goes, I think you're a princess. And the grandmother goes, tell her why you think that. And the little girl looks up at me and goes, because you remind me of sunshine.
Story time, my gym teacher's wife found out that he was having an affair with me. So a little background information. I was a sophomore in high school, and the one night my friends and I were playing Truth or Dare. Well, a little bit into the game, my friends dared me to download Tinder and message the first 5 guys that I saw. And what do you know, the last guy that I saw on there was my gym teacher. So obviously I messaged him and I was like, hey, OMG, it's blah, blah, blah from your 3rd period class. And obviously I wasn't expecting him to answer, but he did. And he was like, oh, this is weird. How are you? So after that, my friends were like, oh, okay, like it's time to delete it. So I pretended that I did. And when they left, I started messaging him more.
So when I was a sophomore in high school, I had this teacher who would only let the students in her class use the restroom 1 time per semester. Well, one day I raised my hand and I was like, excuse me, I don't remember her name. Can I please use the restroom? And she was like, no, you can't because you've already used the restroom in my class this semester. Well, excuse me, you can't dictate my bladder. So I'm like all frustrated and I started secretly texting my mom because I wasn't allowed to use my phone in class. And I was like, Mom, I'm sitting in class right now. My teacher won't let me use the restroom. And she was like, I'll take care of it for you. And I was like, okay. So like 5 minutes goes by and all of a sudden my teacher's phone starts ringing and she walks up to it and answers it and she's like, hello? Yeah. Okay, thank you. And then she walks up to me like so angry and she like slams the pass on my desk and she was like, since you have to go that bad. And I was like, yeah, I really do. Thanks. And I got up and left. I didn't even have to go to the bathroom. It was just the principle of it. I just roamed the halls.
Usually when my clients arrive for their appointment, they're not wearing any makeup. But this girl wore makeup to the appointment just to have me take it off and then do her makeup again. I thought that was a little strange, but after I removed her makeup, I saw her nose. The tip of her nose was bright red and even a little bit deformed. It looked like a really, really bad sunburn. I tried to avoid the area when I started doing her makeup, but eventually I had to put makeup on her nose. And when I did, it was just not working. Her skin was literally peeling off. The makeup would not stay. So that's when I asked her, is there something going on with your nose that I should know about? Let me also just say that at this point, it was starting to swell and was noticeably more red than it was when she got there. That's when she told me that she had recently been out of the country for a mission trip and that she had picked up a flesh-eating bacteria, which had affected her nose. Then she told me not to worry because she had been on antibiotics for months, and that the irritation on her nose was just her skin healing. For once, I was horrified, not my client.
Here's a story time of how me and my sisters almost got kidnapped. So my mom and her boyfriend were just going to go out and have a night to themselves, and I was home watching my 2 little sisters. At the time, I was 13, my 2 little sisters were 9 and 6. So around 6 p.m., my mom and her boyfriend leave. Me and my sisters just sit down and watch a movie, and then I get up to make them dinner. I get paranoid really easily, and while I was making them dinner, I look out the kitchen window, and I thought I seen somebody in the backyard. I text my mom and she gets on the cameras that are outside and she said nobody was out there. I continue making them dinner, we sit down and eat, and then we start watching another movie. Then we start hearing knocking. It wasn't coming from any of the doors, it was coming from the side of the house. I didn't want to bother my mom on her one night out, so I just took the kids and we went upstairs and watched a movie in my room. My 6-year-old sister at the time went to the bathroom and she came back in literal tears. She was literally crying so hard until I finally got her to stop and tell me what was wrong. She said as she was walking back from the bathroom, she seen somebody downstairs. I quietly locked my door and I put my sisters in the closet and I called my mom right away. Part 2 of how me and my sisters almost got kidnapped. I called my mom and then she looked on the cameras downstairs and somebody was in the house. She never told me what the person was doing. I guess she just didn't want me worrying, but she called 911 right away. While my 2 little sisters were in the closet, my 6-year-old sister would not stop crying and I'm pretty sure the person downstairs heard her. At this time, my mom and her boyfriend were already on the way and so were the police. I heard him coming up the steps, so I quietly opened the closet door and promised my sisters that they would stay quiet and be calm no matter what. I didn't know what he was here for, so I hid in the side of the bed in front of the closet so that he would get to me before he got to the girls. I heard him just rummaging through stuff and stuff breaking. Then a couple minutes later, I hear the police sirens. Right as I hear the police sirens, I hear our bedroom windows smash. While trying to stay as calm as I can, 3 policemen bust down the door. They grab me and my sisters and take us outside. About 5 minutes after they take us outside and put us in the back of their car, my mom and her boyfriend shows up. About 20 minutes later after he was caught, they did notify us that he was wanted for murder of 2 younger girls and 1 adult male. About $10,000 of our stuff was either missing or broke. Then about a month later when we were capable to, we did move. Nothing has happened since.
Story time on how I caught my dad sleeping with my sister, his biological daughter. Okay, so boom, let's jump right into it. So my mom passed away when I was 10 years old. Me, my dad, and sister grieved the loss of our mom/wife and honored her as best as we could. But the loss of our mom hit our dad pretty rough. Due to the loss, for about 4 years, he continued to suffer from depression. But recently, my dad has been happy. The happiest I've seen him in a long time. And it kind of came out of nowhere, but of course, I was happy for my dad. I'm now 14 and my sister is 12, and everyone always says how much my little sister looks like my mom. Literally my mom's twin and mini-me. I thought nothing of it, but little did I know my sister looking like my mom would make my dad do some disgusting things. Like and follow for part 2 on how I caught my dad sleeping with my sister, his biological daughter. Okay, so boom, like I said, after my mom passed away, my dad became depressed until a couple years later he just wasn't. Watch part 1 to understand. Now I'm 14 and my sister's 12, and everyone is saying my sister looks like my mom. Literally twins, she is the mini-me of my mom. And I guess my dad seen this too, and he became obsessed with my little sister. He would dress my little sister up as my mom and even became way too affectionate with her. For some reason, my little sister liked this attention, but like I knew it was wrong. But I didn't know how far my dad would take it. One day I was in my room and I heard moaning, and it sounded like my sister. And it was coming from my dad's room. So I go over there. And yeah, it's exactly what y'all think. I called and told my auntie, and now my dad's in jail. We're living with our auntie, and my sister's in counseling. Be safe.
Scary stories about Disneyland, except this one there's actual proof. One time a guy went to Disneyland and was waiting to ride the roller coaster on Space Mountain. He was standing in line when a guy with red hair came up to him and started talking to him. He seemed nice, but he was a little bit odd. But the thing is, when the ride was over, this red-haired man literally vanished into thin air. The guest reported this incident and was told that he was alone the entire time. This guest might have just encountered a ghost people know as Mr. One Way. Rumor has it that he's the ghost of a man who passed away while on the ride in the 1970s. He always vanishes right before the ride is over, and he likes to talk to people who are riding the roller coaster alone. People have also reported seeing him in the cast member locker rooms. Follow if you want a part 2 because there's so many ghost stories about Disneyland.
I went to my best friend's house after school one day. She invited her boyfriend over without her parents knowing, and her parents didn't even know she had a boyfriend. They didn't allow her to have a boyfriend. I was in the front room working on a science project and watching out to see if her parents spontaneously came home. My best friend and her boyfriend were upstairs. All of a sudden, I see her dad pull into the top of the driveway unexpectedly, and I sprinted upstairs and screamed, "Your dad is here!" They both were laughing and they were like, "Haha, you're so funny." They didn't believe me. And I was like, "Look, he is literally in the driveway." And we were all freaking out, and my best friend screamed, "Where are his shoes?" I didn't remember
the time I got in trouble at recess. I was in school. We used to go outside in the winter even when it was snowy and cold. And the 4th graders that had gone outside before us made this giant snowball. It was a really big snowball. One of the kids in my class asked me to put him inside the snowball. So he climbed in. And he said, "Bury me." So I grabbed some snow and I covered the top of the snowball with the snow. So I covered his head with the snow, and then I start hearing him screaming that he can't get out. So I'm panicking and I go to get the recess aid. Well, long story short, they got him out of the snowball. Or ice ball. Parents came to the school. It was a whole thing. He told them that I pushed him in the snowball and covered him in the snow, which was a vicious lie. He totally asked to be put in there. Tell the story. Don't put the kid.
Story time about this girl who faked being Latina. So there was this girl who went to my school. Let's call her Sarah. Sarah is the queen of lies. In every subject we talk about, Sarah always, and I mean always, comes up with a lie that has to do with her life. Here's an example. What if we're talking about Tom Holland? She'd just come in and say, "Oh yeah, Tom Holland is my dad's friend. I met him once." You know, these types of lies. Another one is when she told everyone she's Latina. It was lunchtime in school, and we were talking about where we went for the summer. Sarah tells us that she went to Spain, and she started telling us on what she did there, and says that she's 50% Latina. She also said that she lived in Spain for 6 years. And if there is any person who lived—
Get ready with me as I tell you guys about the time I had a stalker. When I first moved to LA, I lived in an apartment complex that had a gym with it. But then I moved to somewhere that had no amenities at all, so I had to go and get a different gym membership. Since my rent had gone up, I was like, bitch, I'm gonna save some money and go to Planet Fitness. Key piece of information, this was not in the best area at all. Everything had been totally fine, no weird experiences, until this one day I smiled at a dude in the parking lot and then he left a note on my windshield. I was just trying to be friendly because he was getting out of the car right next to me, but the note basically said, "You're cute, call me," and I kind of laughed at it and never did because it's weird. Fast forward 2 months, I had gotten a new car and it was like 9 p.m. I come out of the gym and there is a sticky note pasted right above my door handle. This is what the note said. Obviously someone was butthurt.
This is why you should never go for someone's looks. Once there was a man who married a woman with long black hair and brown eyes. He thought she was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen, but soon things went terribly wrong. Over the years, her appearance changed, but he couldn't handle it. He didn't like that she gained weight or that her face now had wrinkles on it. For that reason, he quickly divorced her and found a different girl. This would be a horrifying mistake. The new girl was much younger and had long blonde hair. Within weeks, he married her. But as soon as they moved in, he noticed that she completely changed. She wasn't sweet and polite anymore. She became rude and used him for money. One night, he couldn't take it anymore. He got in his car, left the city, and drove back to his ex-wife's house. And what he saw there shocked him. The house was abandoned. He knocked on the door, but no one answered, so he went in. And there, sitting in their old bedroom, was his ex-wife with her long black hair covering her face. He hugged her and cried, explaining how he regretted leaving her. And that's when she said, "I'm glad you're back, if only for a moment." The man said, "What do you mean? I'm back for good. We can spend our lives together." Then he brushed her hair out of her face and screamed. All that's left was a skull. That's when the man looked down and realized he'd been holding nothing but a pile of bones in his hands.
My friend hit his daughter and broke her rib. I'm absolutely furious right now. My friend has a daughter who is also in my 7th grade history class. She is the nicest kid in the world and one of the best students in any of my classes. However, this morning she came into my class late and was not herself. Normally, she is raising her hand and engaging with the class, but she had her hoodie up and her head down. She was holding her arm to the side and looked to be in pain. Halfway through class, I walked by her desk to check on her and she looked up at me and had tears in her eyes. I brought her outside my classroom and asked her what was wrong, but she was not responding, but she started crying even more. After a couple of more minutes of reassurance, she finally opened up. She woke up late for school and accidentally dropped a glass of water when she was getting ready. My friend, who was her father, punched her twice in the ribs and yelled at her for being clumsy. I asked her if she was hurt and she pulled her hoodie up and her ribs were beginning to bruise. My friend is 6'4" and over 200 pounds. My student is 12 years old and cannot be more than 85 pounds. I asked my colleague in the next class to watch over my class and I took her to the health office where her mother picked her up. When she saw her daughter sitting in pain, she nearly burned the office down. She started cursing my friend's name and said this was the last straw for her. She asked me not to file a report, but I told her I was required to as I was shown evidence of abuse and her daughter used the word abuse, which she begrudgingly understood. I am so mad right now. My friend has always had a short temper, but hitting your child because she dropped a glass is beyond disgusting. My student's mother texted me at noon and said her daughter broke a rib and is going to be out of class until Wednesday. I feel awful for my student. She is such a bright student and is well liked by her peers, and now she is having trouble breathing because her father cannot act like an adult. I'm ending my friendship with this man. He has been getting on my nerves for a while, but I will be damned if I'm friends with someone who hits their child.
Crazy things that happened at school. This person said that during their senior year of high school, someone took a massive dump in one of the girls' bathrooms. And by massive, I mean people said it was inhuman how large this poop was. Well, when the first kids saw this, they were amazed. Oh my god. Well, word spread pretty quickly. And within no time, the entire school was made aware of this behemoth dump. And more than 50 students began skipping class to witness this incredible sight. Literally, they were lining up outside this bathroom, taking pictures with it. Oh my god, that's crazy. One kid was even genius enough to start charging admission to see the poop. Head on in. Hold on, you're next, don't worry. $5? Guys, it's $5 to see the poop. If you don't have it, please get out of the line. It's actually beautiful. I know. Mrs. Stevens?
Shh, don't tell the principal.
A plumber was then called and the poop was removed. People still talk about that day. The day someone's monster poop managed to bring a smile to the entire school.
This boy lied about his age just to date me. Story time. So back when my cute self was a senior in high school, there was this new girl that came to our school. Long story short, me and her ended up becoming super close. I went to her house, spent the night. Her family loved me. I mean, why wouldn't they? Anyways, she had a brother. We're gonna call him Binky. Me and Binky got pretty close. Now, I want you guys to keep in mind, Binky didn't go to my school because their parents were divorced. So the sister who I was friends with lived with her mom, and Binky lived with his dad who lived in another city. But sometimes Binky would go to his mom's house, which is how I met him. Now that we got that out of the way, as me and Binky were getting closer, one day he asked me, "Hey, how old are you?" And I was like, "Oh, I just turned 17. How about you?" He told me, "Oh, I'm 17 too, but my 18th birthday is coming up." After a while, me and him eventually started dating. Then one day, I ran into...
So when I was in high school, a lot of the cool teachers would let the seniors out early last period so they could run to their cars and just go home. But my school had this janitor who everyone called Patchy because he had an eye patch. And before anyone comes for me, it was used endearingly and he knew about it and he called himself Patchy. Anyway, Patchy did not like when the seniors left early and he would zip around on his golf cart like around the parking lot trying to stop people from leaving early. Now the gig was if Patchy caught you and was able to stop you from leaving, like going in front of your car or like driving his golf cart into you, he would give you a detention slip and you weren't able to leave early and you would stay after school. So the funniest thing would be at like 2:30 p.m. you would see the seniors like crawling like underneath cars, hiding behind bushes. Some people would just go sprint into the parking lot and try to outrun Patchy and his golf cart. And the best is if like someone got caught by him while he was handing out the detention slip, everyone would run.
I literally want to cry. So if you didn't know, I have a sister and her name's Ashley. And we both have boyfriends. And every night we both fall asleep on the phone with our boyfriends. So one day we're all hanging out and we're like just talking. And my sister's boyfriend looks at me and he's like, "You need to stop going into your sister's room in the middle of the night." And I look at him and I'm like, "What are you talking about? I don't have a reason to go into her room. Like, I don't go into her room, especially in the middle of the night." Then my boyfriend hops in the conversation and he's like, no. He's like, "No, I hear Ashley go into Kayla's room every night and stare at her." So me and my sister both look at each other and we're like, we don't go into each other's rooms.
I walked in on my boyfriend doing the dirty with his gay best friend. My boyfriend moved in with his gay best friend 6 months ago. Here's a little backstory. My boyfriend and I have been together for almost 2 years. My boyfriend is a social butterfly. He has 1,000,001 friends. I got used to this very quickly because most of them were female and a lot of them were gay. They actually became my friends too in some cases. Early on in the relationship, I met one of his best friends. Let's call him Tim. Tim is very, very gay. And he doesn't hide the fact that he thinks my boyfriend is very attractive. I asked my boyfriend if Tim ever made him feel uncomfortable, and he said no. But here's the thing. Tim sometimes says the most outlandish things. He has 1,000,001 friends. I got used to this very quickly because most of them were female and a lot of them were gay. They actually became my friends too in some cases. Early on in the relationship, I met one of his best friends. Let's call him Tim. Tim is very, very gay. And he doesn't hide the fact that he thinks my boyfriend is very attractive. I asked my boyfriend if Tim ever made him feel uncomfortable, and he said no. But here's the thing. Tim sometimes says the most outlandish things about my boyfriend. Yeah, my boyfriend is hot. He's super fit, has a great face, so Timmy loves to comment on his body all the time. On several occasions, he's made really dirty jokes about my boyfriend's butt and the things that he'd like to do to my boyfriend's butt. Every time they go out, he's always trying to get my boyfriend drunk. And when he succeeds, he always takes off his shirt. So then my boyfriend spends the rest of the night shirtless. Obviously, this bothered me, but it didn't bother me enough to ever be concerned. Boy, was I wrong. A few weeks ago, Timmy threw a party and told my boyfriend not to invite me. I got really upset, so I showed up anyway. Timmy was trying to kiss my boyfriend. Part 2 is up. I walked in on my boyfriend doing the dirty with his gay best friend. I instantly knew the only reason I didn't get invited to the party was so that Tim could try to get with my boyfriend. But here's the thing. My boyfriend had so much patience for Timmy. Even though Timmy would make such perverted jokes about my boyfriend would laugh it off and tell me it wasn't a big deal. But I knew it did make him uncomfortable. But of course, I show up to the party anyway. When I got there, I found Timmy sitting on the couch with my boyfriend. My boyfriend was clearly drunk, and Timmy was trying to kiss his neck. As soon as Timmy saw me, he got up from the couch and asked me what I was doing there. He said that it was a boys-only party. When I looked around, it actually was. There were no other women there. I told Timmy that I was going to take my boyfriend home, and he said that I was overreacting and that my boyfriend was just having fun. I walk up to my boyfriend and he is so drunk, he doesn't even recognize me. I grabbed him and got him out of there. The next day, I told my boyfriend that Timmy was trying to kiss him when he was drunk. But of course, my boyfriend defended him. And my boyfriend confessed to me that he knows Timmy has a crush on him and that he's basically his best friend out of pity. Then my boyfriend actually told me I needed to stop being a bitch to Timmy.
I walked in on my boyfriend doing the dirty with his gay best friend. That's when my boyfriend basically told me I needed to stop being a bitch to Tim. I decided to ghost my boyfriend for 2 days because I was so upset at him. But here's the thing, my boyfriend was ghosting me too. So I decided to go over to his apartment because I hadn't heard from him in 24 hours. My boyfriend had given me a key to his apartment, by the way. But before I put in the key to unlock the door, I hear moaning sounds coming from inside. I instantly knew what was happening. Quickly unlock the door and find my boyfriend getting banged on the couch by his gay best friend. It's an image I can never forget. I'm actually traumatized. They separate and my boyfriend comes running over to me. First thing out of his mouth was, "We were just experimenting, it's not a big deal." He thought I was gonna be like, "Oh, cool." I look over at Timmy and he's on the couch smiling. I couldn't help myself and I slapped my boyfriend really hard. I ran away and didn't talk to him for 2 days. He finally came over to my apartment after those 2 days and explained that it was just something experimental. And he swears that they've never done it before and that they never will again. I took him back, but I don't trust him. He says that Timmy will always be his best friend and that I shouldn't get jealous. What should I do?
Story time about how my mother-in-law accused me of cheating on her son. Disclaimer, it's not my story time, it's not on my Instagram. My evil mother-in-law is the worst of the worst. The moment I started dating her perfect little son, she would make judgmental comments on my body, and if I was ever in the kitchen cooking, she would be there to try to criticize everything that I would do. When my husband and I finally got pregnant, she pretended to be happy. I could see deep down inside she was hating the fact that I was pregnant. I think she always had the hope that he would leave me. But let me give you some background info on my husband. This man is lucky to be with me. Not only am I a 12, I am so kind and caring to him, and I have way too much patience for him. Whereas my mother-in-law thinks that he's the one lucky to be with me. First off, I make way more money than my husband, so I'm the one paying for most of the bills. But guess what? My husband asked me not to tell his mom about that because he'd be embarrassed. He also doesn't know how to cook or clean. And guess why? Because his mother did everything for him growing up. So I'm the one that has to cook, clean, and pay for the bills. A few months ago, I asked my husband for a divorce. He ran over to his mom's house and tried to get her to convince me not to. But guess what? His mom called me and told me that she'd convince him to give me a divorce. Part 2 is up. Story time about how my mother-in-law accused me of cheating on her son. Disclaimer, it's not my story time, it's sent me on Instagram. So instead of her trying to convince me not to leave him, she told me that she would convince my husband to break up with me. This was all for my benefit because I was the one that wanted a divorce. But 2 weeks later, I find out I'm pregnant. At the time, we were still living in the same house, but we weren't really talking. So I finally went up to him and told him that I was pregnant. He was so happy. You think he even gave me a hug or a kiss? No, he picked up the phone and called his mother right away. He called her on speaker and I could hear what she was saying. And as soon as he told her, she said, "It's probably not your kid." How could I have not seen this coming? At this point, she thought we were gonna get a divorce. So me having a kid was the worst case scenario for her. Right away, she told him to kick me out of the house that I pay for. That's when I grabbed the phone from him and I started telling her everything. First off, I told her that I paid for all the bills and that her son made only $200 a week from his stupid gaming thing and that he wasn't even bothering to look for another job. And then on top of paying for the bills, I still had to cook and clean. And I asked her, "Do you really think this is the kind of man I want to have a kid with?" She had no response. That's when she hung up the phone and told my husband to go over to her house. Story time about how my mother-in-law accused me of cheating on her son. Disclaimer, is not my story time, it's not on Instagram. When I broke the news to her that he didn't pay for any of the bills and that I was paying for the house, she literally lost her shit. My husband hung up the phone and told me that he would never speak to me again. God, if only that were true. Then he goes over to his mom's house and guess what? An hour later, he demands I go over to her house to apologize to his mother. I said that I would, but instead, I went over there and told her some more truths. I ended up telling her that her son told me not to tell her that he didn't make any money, and that the whole time he and I were together, she thought that he was paying for all the bills. Then I said, "Aren't you embarrassed that your son is like that?" That's when she told me the only way she would accept my child was with a paternity test. Am I supposed to do that with the baby in my belly? Finally, the baby was born and I was able to prove that it was his son. My husband wants us to stay together, but his mom keeps criticizing me. Every time she sees the kid, she says it doesn't look like my husband, even though I already proved that it was his. I think that I should get a divorce. I'm afraid my mother-in-law might do something to the baby. My husband thinks I'm just overreacting. What should I do? I caught my dad cheating with my best friend and he doesn't want me to tell my mom. Disclaimer, is not my story time, it's sent me on Instagram. My dad and I have never gotten along. He's the type of dad that whenever I bring my friends over, he's literally always flirting with them. He'll make sure to be home when he knows my friends are coming. He's really into bodybuilding, so he's pretty fit. So he'll just walk out shirtless into the kitchen while my friends and I are having lunch. I'm constantly telling him to cover up because it's totally embarrassing. 2 weeks ago, I noticed something weird. My best friend was drinking a Starbucks in the kitchen, and when I came into the kitchen, I saw her and my dad quickly let go of their hands. Like they were holding hands. Of course, they played it off and I didn't say anything. Our backyard has a pool house and that's usually where my dad hangs out. By the way, my mom is an amazing woman. She owns a Pilates studio and basically pays for everything. Go to the pool house and that's when I find my dad going down on my best friend. His head was up underneath her skirt. I literally vomited as soon as I saw it. Part 2. my dad's head underneath my friend's skirt because he was going down on her. I actually vomited right then and there. As I'm vomiting outside of the pool house, my dad runs over to me and says, "What you saw is a mistake." And I say, "Of course it was a mistake because you're gonna go rectify this right now." I handed him my cell phone so that he could call my mom. He grabbed my cell phone and threw it into the pool. Then my best friend comes out like nothing happened. She looks at me and says, "Will you please just stop overreacting? It's not that big a deal." I grabbed her by her hair and threw her down on the floor. And then I just started attacking her. So angry at my dad, I was even angrier with her. How could she? My dad pulls me off of her and she starts confessing to everything. Apparently, they've been doing it for a month. Whenever she comes to hang out with me, she'll stay in the pool house, hide in there for hours, and wait for my dad to come home. He was never my best friend. By the way, my best friend and I are both 22. My dad is 47. Here's the worst part. He swore me to secrecy and I agreed. Now they just make out in front of me. Part 3 is up. My dad will just start making out with my best friend in front of me. At this point, he doesn't care. Disclaimer, is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. My mom has had a hard time. This would tear my mom apart. I told my dad that if he doesn't stop this, I'm gonna have to move out of the house. This really woke him up though. He told my best friend that he couldn't keep seeing her. And now she's going crazy. She won't stop calling his cell phone or mine. She'll just show up to our house. Then I caught them doing it again. Of course, I threatened to move out again. Don't know how to handle this situation. What should I do?
I went to my best friend's house after school one day. She invited her boyfriend over without her parents knowing, and her parents didn't even know she had a boyfriend. They didn't allow her to have a boyfriend. I was in the front room working on a science project and watching out to see if her parents spontaneously came home. My best friend and her boyfriend were upstairs. All of a sudden, I see her dad pull into the top of the driveway unexpectedly, and I sprinted upstairs and screamed, "Your dad is here!" They both were laughing and they were like, "Haha, you're so funny." They didn't believe me. And I was like, "Look, he is literally in the driveway." And we were all freaking out, and my best friend screamed, "Where are his shoes?" I didn't remember where I put them because I had hid them earlier to try to be funny, and he ran out the back door and he had to walk home. Her dad didn't see him, but her boyfriend did leave a pot of coffee on. My best friend and I at the time did not drink coffee, and her dad comes in and says, "Why is the coffee machine on? You guys don't drink coffee." And I don't think that I have ever been more scared in my life.
My best friend told my parents that I lost my V card because she was jealous. 2 months ago, I started dating a new guy at our high school. He was the new guy in school and every girl wanted to be with him, including my best friend. Now, before this, my best friend and I had never had any problems between us. She never showed herself to be envious or jealous of me, so I trusted her. And I literally told this girl everything. The new guy started showing me a lot of attention. He followed me on Instagram and DM'd me right away. Apparently, I reminded him of his ex, who he was obsessed with. One morning, my best friend and I are hanging out before class starts. The new guy walks up to us, says good morning to us both, and then asks me if he could talk to me privately. That's when my best friend says, "You can talk in front of me. I'm her best friend and she trusts me." So then he proceeded to ask me out in front of her. The look on her face was terrifying. She was so pissed off. Of course I said yes and he walked away. That's when my best friend said, "Oh my god, he's kind of ugly. Did you smell his breath? It stinks really bad. Why would you ever go out with that guy?" Then she says, "You better not go out with him." Part 2. That's when she said, "You better not go out with him or I'll tell your parents." I looked at her and said, "You wouldn't dare." She's like, "You're right, I wouldn't." By the way, my parents were very strict. They'd never let me go out on dates, much less have a boyfriend. The weekend comes around and I'm getting prepared for my date. So I told my parents that I was going to be with my best friend the entire weekend. And of course, they believe me. I send her a text message saying, "Hey, I told my parents I'm going to be with you. So if they ask you, you got to cover for me." She says, "Of course I will." I go on the date with the new guy and it was so much fun. For the first time ever, I was treated like a girl. He held my hand, he was kissing my neck, and he paid for everything. Like I said, up until that point, I'd never really had an experience like that. I was falling for him quick. We'd gone to watch a movie and at the movie theater, he started kissing me. Of course, I kissed him back. That's when he asked me if I wanted to go back to his house because his parents weren't home. And I said yes. As we're driving to his house, I was so excited. So I texted her out of excitement telling her that I was going to be going back to his house. She replied and told me that I was a slut and that I was being too easy. She even asked me to send her a picture of what I was wearing, which I did. Then she replied, "You'd look like a slut." Then we got to his house and we started making out again. Part 3 is That's when we started doing the dirty in his room. All while my best friend is slut-shaming me. Could hear her messages come in as we're on his bed. I grab my phone and silence it and see that I have about 20 text messages from her. I read the first one and it said, "You better not be effing him right now, or I will tell your parents." But of course I ignored them. I was doing it with this guy. But to be honest, it ended pretty quickly. As I'm getting dressed, he says, "Do you need me to drop you off at your best friend's, or can you stay and have dinner with me?" This boy was trying to cook me dinner. Of course I said yes. I text my best friend and tell her, "Why are you being so mean?" I told her that nothing happened, but she wouldn't believe me. That's when I told her that he was going to make me dinner at his house, and this is when she got even angrier. She said, "Why is he making you dinner? What did you do to have to get that dinner?" I told her nothing and she wouldn't leave me alone. That's when she started calling my phone. Of course, I didn't answer. 3 minutes later, I got a call from my mom. I answered right away and pretended to be at my best friend's. And that's when my mom told me that my best friend called her and told her the truth. So I couldn't lie anymore. Took me to my parents' house and they were furious. My parents told this boy that he has to marry me. He literally ran away. I ran out of time. Part 4 will be up soon. After my bestie told my parents that I lost my V-card, they wanted to force me to marry the guy. And then he ran away. My parents were so furious. That's when I called my bestie to confront her about what she had done. But guess what? She ghosted me for 4 days. I even went to her house and confronted her, but she wouldn't open the door. My parents grounded me for 2 months. They took my phone away and all I could do was go to school and come back home. They even took me to the gynecologist. I was absolutely humiliated. And the boy, forget about it. He also ghosted me. My dad even wanted to go to the boy's house to confront his parents, but I managed to convince him not to. They even wanted to press charges because he's almost 18. Do you see how much drama this caused me? Finally, I see my bestie at school. And guess who she was with? Yeah, the boy who I lost my V-card to. She even made up a rumor that I begged this guy to do it with me, but luckily he does have a backbone and denied it. After about dating for a week, he broke up with her because she was being mean to me. That's when he came back to me and apologized. He said that he really liked me and he came to my parents' house and apologized. My parents finally accepted him. And we've been dating now for 6 months. And my bestie is not my bestie anymore.
So this couple comes in together to buy an engagement ring and they had a budget of about $20,000, which is a lot for an engagement ring. But the ring that she happened to pick out was about $35,000, which is a lot of money. And she was really adamant about picking it and he was kind of reserved, like, you know, it is a lot of money. But she was like, no, if you love me, you'll buy it, yada, yada, yada. And he's like, you know what? You're gonna be my wife, the mother of my kids, whatever makes you happy. So after they finally decide, I pack it up for them. I'm like, here you go. Have a great marriage. Have a great life. Goodbye. About 3 weeks later, the fiance comes in and I'm thinking she just wants to get the ring size or something. And she's like, can you guys take out the diamond and replace it with a cubic zirconium? Cubic zirconium is a very cheap substitute for a diamond. So I was like, yeah, we can do that, but just give us 2 or 3 days. So she leaves and I call her fiance because I was like, oh, this is really suspicious. And he had no idea. After they finally decide, I pack it up for them. I'm like, here you go. Have a great marriage. Have a great life. Goodbye. About 3 weeks later, the fiance comes in and I'm thinking she just wants to get the ring size or something. And she's like, can you guys take out the diamond and replace it with a cubic zirconium? Cubic zirconium is a very cheap substitute for a diamond. So I was like, yeah, we can do that, but just give us 2 or 3 days. So she leaves and I call her fiance because I was like, oh, this is really suspicious. And he had no idea that she came into the shop or that she was coming in. So he calls me 2 days later and he finds out that she was going to break up with him. She would have kept that diamond and she would have given him the fake one. He would have returned it and he would have gotten no money back. Talk about mess.
This is why you should never eat peanut butter. So my cousin just had her baby girl, and she was just getting around and learning to be a new mommy. But she was really messy when it came to changing diapers. When Father's Day came, she threw the party and invited all the family and their kids. When everyone gets there, everyone is having a good time, and she pulls out bread and starts making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for all the kids. In the middle of her preparing, her daughter starts crying, and it's because she needed her diaper changed. So she went into the bathroom to change her diaper, and after she got done, she handed her to me and starts to wash her hands. Afterwards, she just went right back to making the sandwiches. Once she got done, she handed all the kids a sandwich, and I noticed that she had peanut butter on her arm, and I told her to wash it off. And she was like, no biggie, and licked it off her arm. And she realized really quickly that it wasn't peanut butter.
This is why you should not listen to your teacher. Once something terrifying happened to Sophia when she got to school. She went to class as usual when her teacher burst into the room and said, Sophia, I have some bad news. She was shocked and embarrassed to be called out like that in front of her whole class. Her teacher then said, get your things. I just got off the phone with your father. He said your mom was in a horrible accident and he's gonna pick you up now and take you to the hospital. Sophia instantly froze in horror. She tried to explain, but her teacher kept interrupting her. Why are you just standing around? Get your things now. But Sophia wouldn't move. She knew something wasn't right. She said, I don't have a father. He passed away long ago and I never got to meet him. I was raised by a single mother all my life. To this day, Sophia still doesn't know who that man was claiming to be her father and what he planned to do if she had gone with him.
This is why waking up late might just save your life. One day when I was in elementary school, my mom and I both overslept, which meant I wouldn't be ready in time to get on the bus. School started at 8, my bus pickup time was at 7, and it was already 6:40 or something. I was still in my PJs and hadn't even had breakfast yet. My mom decided that today we would just tell the bus driver to go on ahead and she would take me to school, which would give me plenty of time to get ready. It's 6:50, I'm in my PJs eating breakfast, and that's when we hear the bus pull up 10 minutes earlier than scheduled. My mom peeks her head out of the door into the foggy morning and waves the bus on. She closed the door and came back inside, but the bus didn't pull away. There's a knock at the door, and my mom opens it to find a man in a bus driver uniform. He explains he's a substitute bus driver because the regular driver called in sick, and that he's early because he wanted to get an early start on the route. My mom says she's taking me to school because we woke up late. He gets visibly upset and says he can wait a few minutes since he's already ahead of schedule. My mom says that we won't be ready in a few minutes and tells him to go on ahead. He seemed really angry about this, but turned around, got back on the bus, and left. But at 7 a.m., another bus pulls up to my house. My mom went out to talk to them and came back looking terrified.
Storytime about how I got pregnant by my boyfriend's younger brother and he still doesn't know. So a little background information, I am 19 years old and I'm in college. So my boyfriend and I have been dating for about 2 years and we're gonna call him Josh. The 2 years that we've been dating have been super rocky because he would try to hook up with other girls. Well, no, actually he wouldn't try. He would hook up with other girls. And then, him and I would break up and then we would get back together. Just your usual toxic relationship. The main reason why I kept going back to him was because he was super popular, and this made me feel like I was never going to find anybody better than him, so on and so forth. Now, Josh's brother is 21 years old, and somehow, someway, him and I started hooking up. Right around after the time I found out that my boyfriend was cheating on me with my cousin. Yes, my cousin. I'm saying that like I'm not hooking up with his brother. Anyways. Well, one day I realized that I haven't gotten my period in 2 months, so I took a pregnancy test. And it came back positive, like for part 2. Part 2 about how I got pregnant by my boyfriend's younger brother and he still doesn't know. So like I said, my boyfriend cheated on me with my cousin and somehow that led to me hooking up with his younger brother. Well, fast forward, one day I realized that I haven't gotten my period in 2 months, so I took a pregnancy test and it came back positive, of course. And the first thing that I did was go to Josh's brother because him and I were hooking up way more than my boyfriend and I were within the past few months. Well, we both came to the conclusion that I should just tell my boyfriend that it's his and see what happens from there. So I told my boyfriend I'm pregnant and he was super happy, gave me this whole speech about how he's going to be a better boyfriend for me and the baby, which in simpler terms pretty much means, yay babe, I'm going to stop cheating on you since you're pregnant, but only because you're pregnant. So now my boyfriend is raising my 1-year-old daughter who he thinks is his, and I'm still hooking up with his brother.
Husband got my best friend pregnant and now is forcing me to raise the child. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. About a year ago, I started getting suspicious that my husband was having an affair. So naturally, I started investigating. I went through his phone when he was asleep, but I didn't find anything. That's when I realized that I needed to start following him. And when I did is when I found out who he was cheating on me with. Turns out it was my best friend. My best friend had just gotten a divorce with her husband at the time. And she told me that she was trying to have fun with as many men as she possibly could. I just never thought it would occur to her to sleep with my husband. For a full week, I followed my husband and he would see my best friend every single day. Sometimes they would meet up at her house since her husband at the time. And she every single day. Sometimes they would meet up at her house since her husband left her the house. Sometimes they would end up at cheap motels. Of course, I started taking pictures on my iPhone to keep track of everything in case I needed to get a divorce. Come to find out, she was pregnant with twins. Part 2 is my husband got my best friend pregnant and is now forcing me to raise the kids. Disclaimer, is not my story time. After realizing that my husband was cheating on me with my best friend, I confronted him and her together. I pretended I was having a little dinner party and I invited her over. Really did make a nice dinner though. They did not suspect a thing. Comes into the house and gives me a big hug. Right then and there, I hand her my phone so that she could see all of the pictures I took of her and my husband making out outside of motels. Then she looks at my husband and says, "What did you say?" What did you say? He didn't even bother to look me in the face. Handed me back my phone and simply left the house. Then I'm left alone with my husband. Start confronting him and then he tells me that he made a mistake and that he was just bored with our relationship and that he loved me. He manipulated me so much that night that I ended up forgiving him. He promised he would never see my best friend again. And guess what? My bestie kept looking for my husband. One night she came over and told me that she needed to see him. I did not let her into the house and she started yelling. That's when she finally says I'm pregnant with twins. Apparently she had been pregnant for 3 months and didn't tell anybody. And my husband was happy about it. That's when he asked me if I would be willing to raise the kids. Part 3 is up. My husband got my best friend pregnant and is now forcing me to raise the kids. Disclaimer, is not my story time. After she told us that she was 3 months pregnant, my husband was so happy. He told her that he would take care of everything and not to worry about the medical bills. As soon as my best friend left our house, my husband turns to me and says, "You and I are gonna raise those kids without her." That's when I said he was crazy. I was not about to raise the kid that he had with my best friend. That's when he said that if I didn't, he would divorce me and marry my best friend. But I do have to say, I am still madly in love with my husband. We've only been together for 3 years. He was my dream man when we got married and he still kind of is my dream man even though he did cheat on me with my best friend. When he threatened me with that, I said okay. The next 6 months, my best friend moved into our house while she was pregnant. My husband and I served her hand and foot. And in some weird way, my best friend and I became best friends again, even though she was having my husband's babies. Also turns out that she was having twins. During the pregnancy, my husband told her that she could stay to live with us and we could all raise the kids together. To be honest, I didn't mind the idea. My husband's real plan was to try to get rid of her, so that we could move away and she wouldn't be able to find us. But my best friend was looking forward to having her babies. Once she gave birth, my husband decided to bring her back to our house with the babies. Exactly a week later, he kicked her out of our house. And he offered her $50,000 to give the babies to us. And she agreed. So now I'm stuck raising the twins by myself. My husband is always away for work. My best friend never even comes around to look at her kids. My husband told me that he doesn't think we should have our own kids. He also promised he wouldn't cheat again, but I don't know what to believe. What should I do?
Storytime about why I hate my brother's girlfriend. So a little background information, I was 14 years old and had just started my freshman year of high school, and my brother and his girlfriend were both seniors. And we're gonna call his girlfriend Riley. Now, Riley and my brother started dating in the middle of the summer, and you would think since they just started dating and basically just met each other that I wouldn't know her that well. But literally 2 days after they started dating, she started spending every single day at my house. I'm being serious, like she had a whole duffel bag that had basically her closet in it. But that wasn't the problem. So in the summertime, my parents would plan a lot of family activities, and since they were called family activities, his girlfriend wasn't allowed to go. I mean, I think she would have been allowed to go, but she was also really disrespectful to my mom. So after one of our family days, my parents asked my brother if Riley would be joining us for dinner, and he just ignored them. And part 2 about why I hate my brother's girlfriend. So like I said, my room was right next to my brother, so I could literally hear everything. And I guess Riley called him and she was complaining about me. She was like, she's the reason why your mom doesn't like me. I feel like she's jealous of me. She doesn't want us to be together, which was really weird because I didn't give a fuck about what my brother did. So fast forward, school finally starts, and Riley lived about 20 minutes away from us. So my brother told her that he couldn't go and pick her up for school every day. But obviously I would ride to school with him because we lived together. Anyways, eventually she had a problem with that too. So my brother and I had to start leaving 30 minutes early to get to school so we could pick her up. So the first time that we pick her up, we pull up to her house. And obviously I'm in the front seat and she's just standing there. So my brother rolls down the window and he's like, get in the fucking car, we're gonna be late. And then she literally has the audacity to start arguing with my brother in front of me about why she should get the front seat instead of me. Like for part 3. Part 3 about why I hated my brother's girlfriend. So like I said, once she got in, she started screaming about how she should get the front seat instead of me. So I turn around and I'm like, last time I checked, you've only been here for 2 months. Stay in your fucking lane. And then she starts crying because she's like, oh my god, your sister's so mean to me. Like, I just feel like I should have more respect as his girlfriend. So fast forward to the weekend, my mom said that she needs to have a talk with me. And she's like, honey, I know you may not like your brother's girlfriend, but you have to stop being mean to her. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I've only had one conversation with her in the last week, and that was to tell her to stay in her fucking lane. And then I told her about everything going on, so she calls my brother down to ask him if it's true, and my brother was pretty pissed off at me, but he wouldn't lie. So my mom said that she was not allowed over the house anymore, and that he wasn't allowed to go pick her up from school until I got my license. So that just caused more problems between her and my brother, so he broke up with her. And then she started spreading rumors that she broke up with him because there was something weird going on between him and I.
Found my husband naked with his mom and then she punched me. Disclaimers are not my story time. Send me on Instagram. My mother-in-law is the most toxic, violent woman I've ever met. And she hates me because I married her perfect little boy. Everything started 5 years ago. My husband and I met on Hinge. Neither of us was looking for a serious relationship, but we ended up falling in love. We started going out on dates, and every time we would go on a date, we would end up just spending a week together. Eventually, I got my dream job and I moved to New York City. I was working in fashion and making 6 figures a year. As you can imagine, my life was amazing. He asked me to be his girlfriend and we decided to do long distance. It was totally fine for the first couple of months. He was the one that decided to drive 5 hours to come see me. 2 months later, out of nowhere, he decided to propose. But the thing is, I wasn't sure if I should say yes. We hadn't been together long, and he was already offering to move to New York City with me. My life was so good in New York, I didn't know if I wanted him to come be with me. When I said I wasn't sure, his mother called me to convince me to marry him. Part 2 is tell me about how I found my husband naked with his mom and then she punched me. Disclaimers are not my story time. Send me on Instagram. My mother-in-law calls me to convince me to marry her son. And guess what? She managed to convince me, so I said yes. We ended up moving to my apartment in New York City 2 weeks later. That's when my personal nightmare began. My mother-in-law started coming over to our apartment every single weekend to plan the wedding. But all she cared about planning was my husband's stuff. For example, she only wanted to go try on his suits. We didn't even talk about my wedding dress. And this woman had the audacity to plan the whole menu around his favorite foods. One day she comes up to me and says, this is the menu for the wedding, without even asking me. No, I was not about to have corn dogs on the menu. Since we had a spare bedroom in our apartment, she started to sleep over. And she would tell my husband to sleep with her because apparently she was scared at night. At this point, she's planning the wedding. My husband is sleeping with her and my family is paying for it. Part 3 is
Saw my husband naked with his mom, and then she punched me. Disclaimer is not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. After she took over planning our wedding, we finally got married. I was so busy with work that at that point, I just didn't care. For the next few years, she started coming over to our apartment at least once a month, and she would sleep over. And sometimes my husband would sleep with her. I told my husband that it was kind of weird that they slept together, and he told me that it wasn't, that they were just really close. One night I'm sleeping and I hear noises coming from the guest bedroom. I know that they're sleeping in there, so I walk over and open the door. That's when I see them fully naked, and my husband had his arm around her shoulder. Then she runs over to me and starts punching me. And then my husband tells me to get out. Then he gave me some bullshit excuse about how they're recreating childbirth. I kicked her out of the apartment, and my husband got mad at me. I no longer have a relationship with her, and I'm thinking about leaving my husband. She still comes to our apartment and just flat out ignores me. What should I do?